Welcome, everyone, to vpod.ai. I am your host, Mike, and I'm joined by our guest, Susan. You can sponsor this podcast for just $25. Your message will be featured across major platforms like Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, and more. If you're interested, visit vpod.ai to get started today.
Hi, Mike. Thank you so much for having me. I am really excited to get into our discussion today.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one. We are focusing on managing mental health in the modern world. And we are going to look at this through the operational blueprint of comprehensive mental health care, specifically using the infrastructure of Windmind Health and Upwell Medical Clinic down in the Tampa Bay area as our real-world framework.
Right, because looking at an actual working clinic tells you so much about how treatment is evolving.
Exactly. But, before we even talk about clinic infrastructure, I want to talk directly to you, the listener. If you struggle with nighttime anxiety, your biggest trigger might not actually be a looming deadline at work or, racing thoughts about the future.
Yeah, it might be something much more mundane.
Right. It might literally be the turkey sandwich you ate at 8:30 in the evening.
Yeah.
Because there is this advisory highlighted by the clinic about managing nighttime anxiety, and it looks at the period right after 7 in the evening.
A 7 p.m. rule, yeah. It's fascinating.
It really is. It puts late meals right next to glowing screens as these major culprits for overstimulating the brain. And I mean, we all know screens ruin our circadian rhythm, right?
Oh, absolutely. The blue light, the constant dopamine hits.
Yeah, that's basic science at this point. But I have to push back a little on the food thing. Why on earth would the brain treat a late dinner like a psychological threat?
Well, I think it's because we culturally separate the mind and the body. We act as if they operate in completely different jurisdictions, you know?
Yeah, like the brain is up here doing its thing, and the stomach is just a furnace down below.
Exactly. But the autonomic nervous system, it does not recognize that boundary at all. So when you consume a heavy meal late in the evening, you initiate this highly metabolically demanding process.
Just to break down the food.
Right. Digestion pulls a massive amount of blood flow away from other systems. It redirects it to the splanchnic circulation, which serves your GI tract.
Okay, see.
And because of all that chemical and enzymatic breakdown,
Yeah.
your core body temperature actually stays elevated.
Wait, really? Your temperature goes up just from eating?
Yeah, it takes work to digest food.
Okay.
And because of that redirected blood, your resting heart rate increases to pump it all around.
Wow. So the body is essentially revving the engine just to process a sandwich.
It's a massive physiological workload. So picture the patient lying in bed an hour later. The room is dark, the environment is super quiet, but their heart is beating slightly faster.
Right.
Their temperature is up, and their internal systems are just highly active. Now, the brain, specifically the amygdala, is constantly scanning the body for data to interpret the environment.
Looking for danger.
Exactly. It feels the elevated heart rate, it feels the increased temperature, and because there is no obvious external threat, like there's no tiger in the bedroom, it attempts to assign a narrative to those physical sensations.
Oh, wow. So it invents a reason to be scared.
Right. It concludes that if the body is in a state of high arousal, there must be something to panic about. It literally translates a metabolic load into psychological anxiety.
That is wild.
Yeah.
The brain is basically receiving an error code from the stomach and translating it into a panic attack. It actually makes me think of an analogy.
Oh, I love analogies. Let's hear it.
So imagine your brain at 7 in the evening is like a smartphone. You plug it in to install this massive critical operating system update, which, represents sleep and neural repair.
Okay, yeah.
But at the exact same time, you leave an incredibly demanding application running in the background, the digestion of that late meal.
Oh, that's a great way to look at it.
Right. So the phone runs incredibly hot, the battery refuses to charge properly, and the operating system update ultimately just fails.
That captures the mechanical failure perfectly. And, it is not just food. The clinic's advisory also flags the timing of medication.
Right, taking pills late at night.
Yeah, because certain medications have distinct pharmacokinetic profiles. Depending on what it is, it might cause a spike in cortisol, or maybe a subtle increase in norepinephrine when it dissolves into the bloodstream.
Which are growth hormones, basically.
Exactly. If that metabolic spike hits at 10 at night, you are introducing a chemical stimulant into a nervous system that is desperately trying to downregulate.
So you're fighting your own biology.
Pretty much. Managing these inputs, the visual input of the screen, the metabolic input of the meal, the chemical input of the medication, that is really the foundational layer of mental health care. It is about removing the physiological friction that fuels the psychological fire.
Okay, but let's be real. Personal habits only take you so far.
Oh, but definitely.
Like sometimes the patient does put the phone away at 7, they eat early, they perfectly manage their medication schedule, and the crippling anxiety is just still there.
Yeah, biology is complicated.
Right. That is when the internal environment fails and the individual requires external medical infrastructure. And looking at the physical footprint of Windmind Health and Upwell Medical Clinic, the geography really stands out to me.
The physical locations.
Yeah. They have clinic locations in Wesley Chapel, Lando Lakes, Zephyr Hills, Lutz, and Tampa, Florida. And I have a strategic question about this decentralization.
Okay, shoot.
If I were tasked with building a world-class healthcare network, my instinct would be to build one massive gleaming tower in downtown Tampa. Centralize everything. Put all the top doctors, all the resources in one monumental building.
Right, the traditional hospital model.
Yeah. Why take a decentralized approach
Yeah.
and spread out into all these different suburbs and municipalities?
Well, building a centralized medical tower looks fantastic on a corporate brochure, but it often completely ignores the clinical reality of the patients it is supposed to serve.
How so?
In healthcare architecture, there is this principle of minimizing friction. Friction is basically any obstacle that stands between a patient and their treatment. And for a patient suffering from a severe psychiatric condition, friction is fatal to compliance. Think about the specific demographics a clinic like this treats.
Right, severe cases.
Yeah. You have individuals battling agoraphobia, severe panic disorders, debilitating social anxiety, or people in the incredibly fragile early stages of recovering from a substance use disorder.
Oh, man. So asking someone with agoraphobia to navigate Interstate 275 traffic into downtown Tampa,
It's impossible.
it's essentially asking them to face their absolute worst nightmare just to get a basic evaluation.
Exactly. It requires a monumental amount of activation energy. They have to deal with the highway. They have to navigate a massive labyrinthine hospital parking garage.
Which are stressful even on a good day.
Right. And then walk through crowded, intimidating lobbies and wait in these clinical, sterile environments. The friction is so high that the abandonment rate just spikes.
They just give up.
Yeah, they will simply turn the car around, or they just will never make the appointment in the first place.
That makes a lot of sense.
So by decentralizing the physical infrastructure, placing specialized clinics directly in communities like Lutz or Zephyr Hills, the network drastically lowers that barrier to entry.
They bring the care to the patient.
Precisely. They are shortening the distance between a moment of crisis and a moment of care. And when you pair those highly accessible, localized clinics with general and online appointment options,
Like telehealth.
right, telehealth, you create an environment where the patient is significantly more likely to actually initiate treatment and, crucially, maintain the consistency required for recovery.
Okay, so the decentralized model solves the physical friction of getting the patient in the door. But once they step inside, there's an entirely different kind of clinical friction to overcome.
Oh, absolutely. The treatment itself.
Yeah. The core services provided are psychiatric evaluation and treatment, but sitting right next to it is substance use disorder treatment.
Under the same roof.
Exactly. And I want to look closely at the medical professionals on staff because their credentials tell a very specific story about how this network views patient care.
The personnel is really the core of it.
Yeah. We have Dr. A.J. Elam. We have Margot Cron, who is a psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner.
Right.
And then we have Dr. Venkat G. Muva. He has an absolute alphabet soup of credentials after his name. MD, HMDC, FACEAM, MPA.
It is quite a list.
I mean, we all know what an MD is, but break down the rest of those for me, because it seems highly unusual for a standard mental health clinic.
It is an exceptionally rare combination of specializations, and it specifically addresses the clinical friction you just mentioned. Let's start with FACEAM.
Okay, what is that?
It stands for Fellow of the American Society of Addiction Medicine. This indicates a physician who has reached the absolute highest tier of specialized training and recognition in treating the neurobiology of addiction.
Okay, so a true expert in substance use.
Exactly. Then you have HMBC Hospice Medical Director certified.
See, that one is genuinely surprising to me. Why would a psychiatric and addiction clinic feature a doctor with a certification in hospice care? I mean, hospice is end-of-life care.
It seems totally disconnected until you consider what hospice care actually demands of a physician. A hospice medical director is fundamentally an expert in palliative medicine.
Managing pain.
Right. They specialize in alleviating extreme, intractable human suffering. They manage incredibly complex, overlapping medication regimens in patients whose bodies are deeply compromised.
Wow.
So when someone is in the grip of late-stage substance use disorder or a severe treatment-resistant psychiatric distress, they are experiencing profound suffering.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
The palliative mindset, focusing relentlessly on symptom relief, quality of life, and complex pharmacological management, it translates incredibly well to severe addiction and mental health crises.
It is the expertise of managing the extremes of human distress. I hadn't thought of it like that.
It's a very empathetic approach to medicine.
And the last one, MPA.
Master of Public Administration. This brings systems-level thinking into the clinic.
Like healthcare policy.
Exactly. A doctor with an MPA is not just looking at the single patient sitting in front of them. They understand how community resources, public health policies, and clinical infrastructure impact that individual's ability to heal.
So it is a macro-level perspective applied to micro-level care.
Precisely.
And bringing all of those specialized viewpoints together, addiction medicine, palliative suffering management, public administration, alongside a dedicated psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner, it really highlights the reality of dual diagnosis.
Yes, dual diagnosis is so critical here.
Because for decades, the medical system treated mental health and addiction as completely separate silos, right? Like you would go to a therapist across town for your panic attacks and then go to a completely different facility for a substance use issue.
And siloing those treatments is clinically disastrous because the two conditions are almost always neurologically intertwined.
They feed into each other.
Right. It is frequently a devastating cycle of self-medication that alters brain chemistry. Let's actually look at the neurobiology for a second.
Yeah, let's do it.
When someone experiences chronic, crippling anxiety, their nervous system is locked in a state of hyperarousal. To escape that feeling, they might turn to a substance, like alcohol.
Which slows things down.
Exactly. Alcohol acts as a central nervous system depressant by artificially enhancing the effects of GABA. And GABA is the brain's primary inhibitory neurotransmitter.
The brakes, basically.
Yes, the brakes. It effectively forces the brain to slow down, providing this temporary relief from the anxiety.
But the brain is highly adaptive, right? It doesn't just passively accept that artificial interference.
Not at all. The brain recognizes that the system is being artificially depressed, so it compensates. It downregulates its own natural GABA receptors, making them much less sensitive.
Oh, wow. So it takes the brakes away.
Yeah, and at the exact same time, it upregulates the production of glutamate.
Which is what?
Glutamate is the brain's primary excitatory neurotransmitter. So the brain is essentially trying to wake the system back up while the alcohol is pushing it down.
So when the alcohol wears off, the patient is left in a state where their calming receptors are blunted and their stress receptors are working in overdrive.
Exactly. The clinical term is rebound anxiety, and the physiological reality is just terrifying for the patient.
I can imagine.
The anxiety returns exponentially worse than it was before they took the drink, and that creates an overwhelming biological compulsion to consume the substance again just to reach a baseline level of functioning.
Right, just to feel normal.
Yeah. So if a medical professional only treats the addiction, say, by putting the patient through detox, but ignores the raging underlying glutamate storm and the anxiety disorder,
We're going to relapse.
relapse is an absolute biological certainty. The nervous system simply cannot handle the distress. And conversely, if you try to treat the anxiety with standard talk therapy, but ignore the fact that the patient's GABA receptors have been structurally altered by substance abuse, the therapy will fail.
Because the foundation is completely crumbling beneath the treatment.
Exactly. This is why integrating FASAM-level addiction expertise with ongoing psychiatric management under a single roof is so vital.
But it can tackle both at once.
Right. The clinical team can simultaneously manage the neurochemical withdrawal and the psychiatric distress. They treat the interlocking biological mechanisms as one unified problem, rather than shipping the patient's brain to one doctor and their habits to another.
That integration clearly handles the complex cases. But there is an entirely different frontier of treatment mentioned in this network's blueprint that I want to ask about.
Okay, what's that?
Alongside traditional psychiatric evaluations in addiction medicine, they highlight a trademarked proprietary service called Windmind therapy.
Ah, yes, Windmind.
And I have to be honest, Windmind sounds a bit like a concept from a cyberpunk sci-fi novel.
It is a very futuristic name for sure.
But beyond the branding, The existence of a proprietary therapy poses a really interesting question.
What's the question?
Well, if traditional talk therapy and modern psychiatric medications are the gold standard, why do modern clinics feel the need to introduce new, specialized, or heavily branded treatment frameworks?
That is a great question. And the necessity for specialized modalities really stems from one of the darkest realities in modern psychiatry, which is treatment resistance.
Treatment resistance, okay.
Yeah. The general public often assumes that if you have depression or anxiety, you simply go to the doctor, you get an SSRI, you talk to a counselor once a week, and you get better.
Right. That's the narrative we're all sold.
And for millions of people, that standard protocol actually works beautifully. But human neurobiology is staggeringly diverse.
It's not one size fits all.
Not even close. There is a massive subset of the population whose brains simply do not respond to conventional psychopharmacology or cognitive behavioral therapy.
Wait, really? What makes a brain treatment resistant? Like, why does a pill that saves one person's life do absolutely nothing for another person?
It comes down to the specific mechanisms of the illness. Standard antidepressants, like SSRIs, work by increasing the availability of serotonin in the synaptic cleft.
Right, boosting the happy chemicals.
But what if a particular patient's depression isn't caused by a serotonin deficit? What if their condition is rooted in severe neuroinflammation? Or a structural rigidity in the brain's default mode network, which traps them in a loop of negative rumination?
So the SSRI is attacking the wrong problem.
Exactly. For those patients, taking an SSRI is like trying to fix a broken transmission by changing the windshield wiper fluid. It is applying the wrong mechanism to the problem.
That has to be an unimaginably isolating place for a patient to be. I mean, trying medication after medication, dealing with the side effects, doing all the work in therapy, and seeing zero reduction in their symptoms.
It is heartbreaking. It creates profound clinical despair. The patient begins to believe they are fundamentally broken and just beyond help.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
And this is the exact environment that forces progressive clinics to look beyond the standard toolbox.
Which brings us back to extremity.
Right. While the precise mechanics of exomen therapy are proprietary to this clinic, the utilization of such a framework signals a commitment to finding novel pathways into the brain.
Trying something completely new.
Exactly. Because human brains are so diverse, standard treatments don't work for everyone. Whether a specialized therapy leverages advanced neuroplasticity protocols or integrates cutting-edge somatic processing, the goal is to bypass the conventional pathways that have already failed the patient.
It's like a backup plan.
It is a clinical declaration that if Plan A, Plan B, and Plan C did not work, the medical team is equipped to design a Plan D.
I love that. It provides a structured, scientific hope for the patients who have been left behind by the averages.
Absolutely.
Well, we have covered the complex biology of evening routines, the architectural strategy of localized clinics, the neurochemistry of dual diagnosis, and the necessity of frontier therapies. But I want to pivot and challenge you on the final piece of this blueprint.
Okay, I'm ready.
We have been discussing profound, severe human suffering. Yet, when we examine how a patient first interacts with this clinic, their digital front door, meaning the website, the network heavily promotes its digital accessibility features.
Yes, the website interface is really important.
But they offer user toggles for light mode, contrast mode, gray mode, and instant font size adjustments. And they also utilize a highly categorized, transparent cookie policy, allowing users to strictly separate necessary, tracking, functional, and performance cookies.
Right.
Let me play devil's advocate here.
Go for it.
When we are dealing with severe addiction and treatment-resistant psychiatric disorders, does giving someone a toggle switch to make a website gray really move the needle clinically? Or is this just a slick public relations move designed to make the clinic look modern?
I get why you would ask that, but it is entirely clinical. And it is rooted in the neuroscience of trauma and acute distress.
Really? A gray website is clinical?
Yes. We have to contextualize the mental state of the user navigating to a psychiatric clinic's website. They are not casually browsing for a pair of shoes.
Right, they're probably having a really bad day.
This person is very likely experiencing a moment of acute crisis. Their sympathetic nervous system is highly activated. And when the nervous system is overwhelmed, sensory gating often collapses.
Sensory gating, what is that?
It's the brain's ability to filter out unnecessary environmental stimuli.
Oh, I see. So they become hypersensitive to everything in their environment.
Hypersensitive and easily triggered. High contrast visual stimuli, aggressive colors, or a chaotic layout require cognitive processing power that a person in a panic attack simply does not possess.
Wow, so a bright website can actually be harmful in that moment.
If they land on a visually aggressive website, the amygdala registers that sensory overload as an additional threat. And the psychological response to an unmanageable threat is avoidance.
They will just close the browser tab.
Exactly. They abandon the attempt to seek help. A feature like gray mode mutes overstimulating colors and flattens the visual hierarchy. It instantly reduces the cognitive load required to navigate the page.
That reframes web design entirely.
It is an act of trauma-informed user interface design. It lowers the sensory friction just enough to keep the patient engaged.
It is not about aesthetics at all. It is about managing the user's neurological bandwidth.
Exactly.
But what about the transparent cookie policy? I mean, reading a website's cookie policy usually causes me anxiety. How does allowing someone to opt out of tracking cookies intersect with mental health treatment?
It intersects directly with psychological safety and the concept of bodily and digital autonomy. Consider the mindset of someone suffering from severe anxiety, PTSD, or a substance use disorder.
Okay.
Paranoia and a profound feeling of a loss of control are hallmark symptoms of these conditions. The feeling of being watched, tracked, or having personal data harvested without explicit consent is inherently triggering.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The standard internet experience, where you are forced to click a vague, monolithic accept-all button just to read a page, strips the user of their agency.
It reinforces the feeling that they are not in control of their environment.
Precisely. By presenting a clean, highly categorized dashboard that clearly states exactly what is being tracked and offering the immediate power to disable it, the clinic is establishing trust before a single word is spoken.
They're proving they respect the patient's boundaries.
Yes. They are proving it through the architecture of their code. Regaining a sense of agency is the first step in recovering from trauma. Giving the user an active choice in their digital privacy provides a microdose of that agency. It literally says, you are in control here.
That is a fascinating insight. The clinical philosophy extends all the way down to the HTML.
It really does.
Well, we have traced an incredible journey of infrastructure today. We started by looking at how the biological inputs of an evening routine, late meals and timed medications, can inadvertently trick the autonomic nervous system into a state of panic.
Right, the 7 p.m. rule.
We explored how external infrastructure steps in when internal habits fail, specifically how decentralizing physical clinics across regions like Luntz and Wesley Chapel removes the geographical friction of seeking care.
Bringing the clinics to the people.
Yeah. And we break down the vital importance of treating the whole biological system under one roof, analyzing how specialized credentials in addiction and palliative medicine allow a clinic to break the devastating neurochemical cycles of dual diagnosis.
Treating the GABA and the glutamate.
Exactly. We also looked at how proprietary frameworks like X-Mind therapy are necessary to reach the treatment-resistant brains that standard medicine leaves behind. And finally, we saw how trauma-informed care dictates even the visual contrast and privacy controls of a digital interface.
It really illustrates that effective mental health care is not a single intervention. It is a comprehensive, meticulously designed ecosystem that anticipates the patient's vulnerabilities at every possible touch point.
It really is. And we want to leave you, the listener, with a final question to ponder today. We just discussed how medical professionals are actively designing their digital spaces with gray modes, adjustable fonts, and strict privacy controls, specifically to reduce sensory overload and psychological distress. If the experts treating severe anxiety recognize that our digital environments need to be constructed with this level of calm and transparency, how might our everyday applications, the social media feeds, the news aggregators, the shopping platforms, need to fundamentally evolve to stop fueling the very neurological burnout these clinics are trying to treat?
That is a profound systems-level question to consider.
It really makes you think. Well, thank you all for joining us on this exploration. Remember, vpod.ai is where complex topics become clear. Take care, and we will catch you next time.